I'm Jill. Standing in the cold on the porch of the house I'd just bought, I stared at my mother, Diane, and the small crowd of neighbors gathered in the yard. It was Christmas Eve, and I'd driven 4 hours through the snow, full of hope and a plan to save the home that held so many of my memories. But what greeted me was a cruel prank, a dark house, and my mother's mocking words. The moment she said, "We just wanted to see if you'd still come running, like a dog," something inside me went still. I looked around at the scene, the neighbors watching, my sister Megan filming, and I knew I had to take control. I set down the wine and cookies I'd brought, and I texted Ben, my real estate attorney friend from college. As I stood there, I couldn't help but think back to the 5 years of silence that had led me to this moment. I lived in a small one-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building. The plumbing was always acting up, and the old lady next door played the radio too loud. But it was my little corner of the world. I worked as a project manager at a real estate firm, dealing with the less glamorous side of property management, acquisitions, foreclosures, and audits. I remembered the days when I lived in Jessup with my family. My mother, Diane, was a strong-willed and controlling woman. She always had a way of making me feel like I owed her something. Even when I was working and giving her $800 a month towards the mortgage, she never said a word of thanks. It was just expected. 5 years ago, I was 26. I'd been offered a great job in the city, a project coordinator position with double my salary and amazing benefits. I was over the moon. I came home that night, excited to share the news. I sat at the kitchen table and told my mother I'd still help out financially and visit often. But she just stared at me with cold eyes. "You're leaving," she said, not as a question. "Just like your father." She stood up, her chair scraping the floor. "Selfish, ungrateful. Running off at the first sign of something better." My sister, Lily, who was 22 at the time and still living at home, chimed in. "She only thinks about herself, Mom." Our neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, was there for tea and witnessed the whole thing. My mother pointed at the door. "You walk out, you're dead to me." That night, I packed my bags and left. She blocked my number, and she told the neighbors I was selfish and had abandoned the family. For the next 5 Christmases, I spent them alone. The first year, I had a frozen pizza. The next, I ordered Chinese takeout. By the 3rd year, I stopped even pretending it was a special day. I'd just curl up on the couch and watch TV. Then, in early December, a handwritten letter arrived. It was from my mother. "Jill, this Christmas, I want the family together. I miss you. Mom." I read it over and over again. The handwriting was hers, but the words seemed so out of character. 3 days before the letter arrived, I was doing a routine audit at work. I was scanning foreclosure listings when I saw it, 12 Elm Street, Jessup. My mother's house. It was 4 months in default, and an auction was scheduled in 30 days. I immediately called Ben. "Ben, I need you to look into this for me." He called me back the next day. "It's bad, Jill. Your mother hasn't responded to any of the bank's notices. The auction is set for December 15th. I knew I had to do something. That house was more than just a building. It was where I'd grown up, where I'd learned to ride a bike in the driveway and studied late into the night in my upstairs bedroom. I decided to buy the house at the auction. I worked with Ben to prepare a cash offer through an LLC I had set up for work. The day of the auction, I outbid 2 other bidders. It was a relief when the deed was recorded at the county clerk's office. I held the certified copy in my hands, feeling a sense of quiet determination. I planned to go home for Christmas, sit down with my mother, explain the foreclosure, and offer her a lease at a fair market rent. I even drafted a lease agreement the night before I left. On December 24th, I packed the car with a nice bottle of wine, a box of homemade brownies, and the lease agreement in my coat pocket. I drove for 4 hours, and as I got closer to Jessup, I pulled up an old voicemail from my mother. "Don't call back. Don't come back. We're done. I don't know why I'd kept it, but it was a reminder of the pain I'd endured. When I finally reached Elm Street, every house was lit up with Christmas lights, except for my mother's. It was pitch black. I parked and walked up the porch steps, my heart pounding. I knocked on the door, and it slowly opened to darkness. My mother stepped into the doorway, arms crossed. Well. She actually came. Lily appeared behind her, phone in hand, recording. I told you she would. Pathetic. I took a deep breath. Mom, what's going on? She tilted her head and smiled wickedly. We just wanted to see if you'd still come running. I looked around at the neighbors, some of them laughing, some looking uncomfortable. I set the brownies on the railing and said, "You're right about one thing, Mom. I did come here for a reason, but it wasn't the one you think." Just then, the doorbell rang. I knew it was Ben. I opened the door, and he stood there with a leather briefcase. "Merry Christmas, Jill. I brought the paperwork." My mother's eyes widened. "Who the hell is that?" I stepped aside and said, "Mom, this is Ben. He's a real estate attorney." The room went quiet. I sat my mother down at the kitchen table and said, "Mom, you haven't paid the mortgage in 4 months. The bank sent notices, but you ignored them. I found out about the foreclosure at work, and I bought the house at auction." My mother's face turned pale. "You can't do this." "I'm your mother." I replied, "I'm the person who saved this house from being sold to a stranger. I was going to offer you a lease, but you decided to play this cruel prank." I took out the lease agreement and set it on the table. "This offer stands until January 1st. You can stay here and pay a fair rent, or I'll list the house in March." My sister, Lily, was in tears. "You bought our house to punish us?" I said, "I bought it because it was about to be lost. Would you rather a stranger bought it and raised the rent?" Greg, my mother's boyfriend, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Diane, you told me the house was fine." My mother snapped at him, "This is your fault. You never did enough." The room was in chaos. The neighbors started to leave, and I could see the truth dawning on everyone. My mother sat there, looking defeated. I stood up and said, "I didn't buy this house to hurt anyone. I did it because this house means the world to me. I want you to have a chance to stay, but you need to make a choice." I walked out of the house, got in my car, and drove to the Pine Ridge Inn. I didn't know if my mother would call or if Lily would delete the video. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. The next morning, Ben came to the inn with coffee. My phone buzzed with texts. Greg texted to say he was sorry and that he was moving out. Lily texted that I'd ruined Christmas. And there was nothing from my mother. I knew she was proud, and it would be hard for her to accept the lease. But I'd given her a fair deal. If she didn't take it, I'd have to list the house. A few days later, on New Year's Eve, there was a knock on my apartment door. It was Lily. She looked tired and defeated. "Mom's not going to sign the lease. She's packing to leave." I said, "That's her choice." She then said, "I deleted the video." "I'm sorry, Jill. I didn't know she was going to lose the house. She told me everything was fine." She hesitated, then blurted out, "Can I rent the house from you? I have nowhere else to go." I looked at her, and I felt a mix of emotions. I said, "There are conditions, Lily. Rent on time, no recording without consent, and your mom can't move back in without my approval." She nodded. "I'll agree to anything." I let her in, and we sat at the kitchen table as I heated up some soup. In the following days, my mother moved out to her sister's house. Greg found a room above a store. Lily signed the lease and got a job at a local bakery. I hired a property manager to handle the day-to-day affairs. As the weeks passed, I heard through Mrs. Thompson that my mother was telling people I'd stolen the house. But the neighbors who had witnessed the events on Christmas Eve knew the truth. My mother stopped going to church and social events. I felt a twinge of sadness for her, but I also knew that I'd done the right thing. It was now March, and Lily was paying rent on time. We talked on the phone every couple of weeks, and our conversations were slowly becoming more friendly. She'd even apologized for the prank, saying she was jealous of my life in the city. I knew that the road ahead might still be bumpy, but I was finally in a place where I could set boundaries and take control of my own life. The house was safe, and I had a new relationship with my sister. And who knows, maybe one day, my mother would come around.